I converted to Judaism about 13 years ago. I have very special guests this week, Rabbi Tovia singer from Outreach Judaism and Shannon from Beinenu. First, I'd like to introduce myself for those of you who don't know me. I'm Jazlia. I'm a singer-songwriter. I live in Ramat Bet Shemesh with my 7 children and my husband, Yosef Daniel, who is also a singer and performer. I left the church when I was 17 years old in 2006. My father was a pastor of a evangelical Christian church, a Hispanic church down in Texas. We came from the Church of God Seventh Day, which was a branch of the Adventist church. And we kept Shabbat as far as how we knew we were supposed to, Friday sundown to Saturday sundown. Never ate unkosher animals, and we never celebrated Christmas or Easter. And something happened where my mom, she got so annoyed with us being very boring Christians because we didn't have our own holidays. And we also weren't Jewish, but we kept a lot of customs. So eventually she started becoming interested in Messianic Jews. And we went through a month era of that transition where we got to participate in a Simchat Torah, going around dancing to the Beach Boys and taking shots after their interpretation of what Simchat Torah was. And all of a sudden, my mom talked to us about a Rabbi Tovia singer. This was when I was 17 years old, about 17 years ago. And it changed my whole life. Rabbi Tovia singer, I'm about to get emotional because me and you, actually, we go way back. We go way back, you and my family. And because Hashem, he used you to be a big vessel for us to be able to leave idolatry, to find our true God. And we left the church, including my father and my family, my husband, who at the time was my fiance, and we are now Jewish. My husband and I were very involved in the Jewish music industry. My parents live here. My family, we converted. My brother and my sister, we all left the church. So I want to first of all say a huge thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Because it's not only me and my family that you take out, but if you see Rabbi Tovia singers, I was just going through all his videos this week and all his comments. He is responsible for a lot of people who have left the church and who are finding our one true God. And it's a very emotional for me, especially during Chanukah, to have the rabbi here. And so thank you so much. Rabbi Tovia Singer is the founder of Outreach Judaism. And also we have Shannon, who's here from Beinenu. Really excited to have her. Shannon, I learned about you in the past couple of years. You've been here in Israel going against anti-missionary groups that are here in Israel and around the world. And we're very thankful to have you and Rabbi Singer doing this work, which is very important. I don't think a lot of people understand how important it is. And if it wasn't for people like you who are working strong on the ground, there wouldn't be Jews who are coming back to their faith, and there wouldn't be even Christians who are leaving their idolatrous ways. So a big thank you to both, and welcome.
Welcome to your people, to the God of Israel, the one who keeps his promise, to our rock and our Redeemer and our only Savior, to whom every knee will bow and every tongue will praise. I'm very delighted. I too am a singer. However, the difference between you and me is very significant because I'm only a singer by name, whereas you actually do it. And my life is devoted to helping Jewish people in the church return back to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. There are very aggressive missionaries out there who want to destroy us. In fact, it is now Chanukah, where we commemorate a moment in history when a nation rose up to eradicate our people spiritually, not physically. And the God of Israel kept his promise then, and now we're celebrating Hanukkah, where we recall not just a military victory, but a spiritual victory over the Greek Empire. And I'm very grateful to be with you and Shannon here on this very unique broadcast.
We're all involved in the ministry, given that my father was the pastor of the church. And it was my mission. I was the most spiritual in my family. And right before our whole life changed, which was during the Gush Katif evacuation, where my mom went into intense studying, I had set my career to join Christ for the Nations in Dallas, Texas, and to
Christ for the Nations.
yeah,
wow. All right.
and to be a part of Hillsong, Bethel, Elevation Music, who actually missionized around the world through the performing arts. My husband was about to sign on to a huge Christian record label, and all of that took a huge turn during this year, and we heard your name a lot. I'm just going to jump into it. Just wanted to give a little bit of who I was and how you were a big part of that. The first question is, with everything that's going on with the current situation, do you believe that we are currently in the time of Geulah, like our final days? What we talk about, I know that from what a Christian used to believe in Geulah, what it is, it's completely different to what we believe as Jews. And is there anything different now that you do compared to what it used to be?
Okay, so we're in a Geulah process right now. It's happening now, which means the redemption is occurring now. Mashiach is here now. And you might go, what are you talking about? Well, as it turns out, the Geulah today is similar to the Geulah from Egypt 3,300 years ago. And just as when the Almighty, blessed be his holy name, redeemed our nation from servitude, there were 10 plagues, not one. It was a series of events that took place. It was a seder of events. It's not an accident that the meal that we enjoy on the 15th day of the first month is called a seder. It's called an order. And there are 15 stages. We're in that stage now. The nation has returned back to the land. Yerushalayim has been returned back to us. Jeremiah chapter 30, verse 3. I encourage you to look it up for yourself. It's all promised there. And I want to say something else and listen very carefully. We are not the same nation that we were on October 6th. The people we were before this this very grave event will never be again. Never. Neither you nor I nor you who are watching me, you will never be the same person. We were a divided people. And this is the event of Mashiach ben Yosef, the Messiah, the son of Joseph, who is not an individual, but it's many people who perish immediately before Mashiach ben David comes. Our tradition says that Milchemes Gog uMagog, this final war, is triggered on Sukkot. In fact, the Talmud says in Megillah 31a that we must therefore read on Sukkot in the synagogue at Ezekiel chapter 38 and 39, which is the most explicit passage about the final war. We're in that now. It's happening now, right now. When I say we're not the same people, you know exactly what I mean. We were divided, I'm sad to say, in Israel and around the world, bickering. And now those things all seem quite silly. Moreover, the Jews who were murdered on that horrible day came from every strata of Jewish society. There were some of them who were not religious. Many of them were leftists. Some were religious. Some were right wing. Some were here. Some were there. And we don't care. The body, when any part of the body is attacked, the whole body's in pain. This is Mashiach ben Yosef. This is what is happening right now. We are right now in the redemption. So if you would imagine that we will now 3,300 years ago, imagine we would now be experiencing the seventh plague, the plague of hail, as an example. So that means it's happening. So it's unfolding at this moment as we speak now. It's unfortunate that we needed a Mashiach ben Yosef, but we did. We were not in good shape. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu had a promise to keep and a nation to raise up, and he did exactly that. We are now unified. In fact, our boys who are fighting right now in the southern part of Eretz Israel also come from every strata of Israeli society. So there are young men and women who are fighting for people they don't know. But we are one nation. We are living b'shas hagula. We must be prepared in our heart to love each other and to be united in purpose, because we all have an appointment with destiny that is unfolding at this very moment.
How is it that we can prepare for that? Not only we as Jews, but in your line of work, where it's outreach Judaism, I also see a form of outreach nations, because a lot of people come to you, not just Jewish people and Christians who are leaving the church and not even converting to Judaism, but they're just leaving the church in general. They're finding Hashem. And
Right.
how is it in this time of Geula? What is our role in that? And what is our role towards the nations when we see, and I'm not sure if you're part of the social media world, but we see a lot of assimilation. We see a lot of collaborative efforts within Jewish organizations and Christian organizations in the name of unity, in the name of, respect. And me coming from a Christian background, I find it so hard to accept that this is happening within our own nation. But then I see you on your videos and you're so kind to the Christians. I also have family who's still very Christian, but you see the purpose, that there's a purpose, but I don't think it's the same purpose as we're seeing online, the collaborative efforts.
Listen to me, my dear sister. You were nothing more than an imposter Gentile. Your Jewish heritage was taken away from you generations ago. You may or may not discover your Jewish ancestry. I'm pretty sure you will. But what happens is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a promise. The Almighty, blessed be his holy name, has a promise. You'll find it in Isaiah 43. I will call my children from afar, my daughters from farthern islands, and my sons from the ends of the earth. It's a promise. You, young lady, are a walking prophecy. Make no mistake about it. What happened in generations in the past is Jews were forced to convert to Christianity to escape persecution, or sometimes to be able to financially, economically thrive, like Mahler. You're a music person, so that's what Mahler did. He converted to Christianity to continue his work as a conductor and a composer. So what happened is all their children are now waking up. Christianity is Edom. It is the implacable enemy of God. It cannot be redeemed. It can't be transformed. We have books in Tanakh that are devoted to conveying the destruction of Edom. Habakkuk, books like that. Habakkuk himself was a descendant of Edom. Obadiah, totally devoted as examples to the destruction of Edom, because Edom is Esav. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed is his name, says explicitly in the opening of the book of Malachi that I love Yaakov and I hated Esau. The nature of Esau, which is Edom, which is the church, which is the pig. And I don't mean to say the word pig as some gratuitously impolite thing to say about the church, but rather the pig is unique in that it has split hooves, which it prominently displays, but it does not chew its cud. Outwardly, it looks kosher, but open it up is nothing inside. It has one stomach, not four, as a deer and a cow has. Edom must be destroyed. Now, we want everybody in the church to do tshuva and to repent. Doesn't mean they all convert to Judaism, because many of them are not Zerah Avram. They're not from the seed of Abraham. So it is true that I had the opportunity to watch, I don't know the number, many people, Jews in the church, return back to the Jewish faith. Many imposter Gentiles, meaning people who thought they're not Jewish, convert to Judaism. But there are even more people who don't think they're Jewish, who become the pious of the nations of the world. These are the what are called Noachites. It's an unfortunate anachronism, but they join the Jewish faith without joining the Jewish nation. And this must happen in order for Mashiach to come. And we're in the process now of ensuring that Mashiach comes, which means Edom doesn't mean an individual, but the institution must be destroyed. There could be nothing left of it. And how do you do that? Do we launch crusades like the Catholic Church did, or inquisitions? We're not into that. Do we knock on people's doors like the Mormons do? Don't bother. We are a light to the nations, or that flame. And the beauty of a flame is if you have a candle, you can illuminate from that candle, you can kindle from that flame an endless number of other candles, and it doesn't diminish from the original flame. We keep Torah, we shine the light, and even a little light dispels so much darkness. And that's what we're doing.
When it comes to Christian missionaries, we've been speaking for the past few weeks and just raising awareness of what's going on in the inside. You spoke so beautifully of Geula and our role as light to nations, and the Jewish people, just the beauty of who we are and what our role is. The past few weeks, we've just been working on raising awareness on social media about Christian groups coming in and just very subtly, saying nice things or saying that they want to help us. I know that when I was a Christian, that regardless of the love that we had for Israel, there was intentions behind things. I think you and Shannon, more than anybody, can describe to us, maybe share some light on the intentions of the Christian church, regardless if they're good people, regardless if they're nice people. There's a lot of people on social media that don't know. I get a lot of messages because of my background saying, what's the harm? What is the harm of being friends with Christians, or what is the harm of singing even Christian songs, or what is the harm of Christian organizations supporting Israel, especially during this time?
Shannon is an expert really on exposing covert missionaries that are seeking to infiltrate the Jewish community and convert Jews to Christianity using deception. She really is an expert in this field and has succeeded in educating Jewish communities worldwide on that. So she really can speak to that. I will only just share this. Evangelical fundamentalist Christians are completely committed to converting the Jews to Christianity. They are also very pro-Israel, and they are genuinely pro-Israel. I'm not going to go into theology, to the theology that drives this, that fuels it, but in their view, the Jews need to be in Israel for the second coming of Jesus, and they are very pro-Israel. And we have to be very careful with them, because unfortunately they will weaponize their support for Israel in order to evangelize the Jewish community. This is a very grave danger. And now I'll tell you this, because there have been numerous Christian organizations that are seeking to use humanitarian aid to evangelize, I've actually had people, I'm not going to say who they are, but they're famous, who've said to me, Rabbi, maybe they're so pro-Israel, maybe we shouldn't say anything. And I was appalled. I was shocked, because the Jewish community certainly has a right to know what the agenda is. And it's vital for people to understand that these evangelical Christians, now they're very sincere in that they are genuinely pro-Israel. It's very important for you, the viewer, to know. However, they exploit that Zionism and their connection to the Jewish community, which they ordinarily would not have, in a way to convert Jews to Christianity. And I just would turn to Shannon now, and perhaps you can just give us some examples of what you have uncovered recently.
What you had said, we share a very similar background, a very similar story. And I think you understand that I don't think I was a bad person. I don't think you were a bad person. I think our intentions were very pure and loving, but we had been taught that the Jewish people, almost like not their fault, had been blinded, and that they were blind. They couldn't see the truth. So we were taught that we had to use deceptive means, and we justified the use of those deceptive means to reach them. So not that they're bad people or have, evil intentions. It comes from a good place, but the end result is not so nice. It's painful to the Jewish people, and it's done a lot of damage. I feel very guilty, upset that I participated in that. So no, it's not from a bad place. The Christian religion, though, however, the theology is not nice. What I do is I expose those deceptive tactics. I expose the covert missionaries that are acting with not so great intentions, in our midst. It's become much more sophisticated. When they used to just change the words here and there, now they're dressing like Hasidim. They're acting like one of us. They're getting smicha online. They're acting and performing Jewish rituals, completely not Jewish. Those are the types of things that we've been exposing. And it's been shocking. It's shattered a lot of the trust in the Jewish community. It's been very hurtful.
I become very sensitive when I hear of, especially in the music field, when it comes to Jewish music, because Jewish music is sort of new, relatively. In the past 15 years, it's grown, and I'm involved in it. I've seen Christian music seep in through in very subtle ways, to the point that I hear our own Christian singers cover certain songs, or they're watching these services from huge groups like Hillsong, which are, their main purpose here is to missionize. And I've seen it seep through, and I catch it because I have that radar. When it's not a Jewish song, I know where it's coming from. And so sure enough, when I researched it, it's a Christian song that of course I don't listen to anymore. And I go back and I'm like, oh, this is from this person that I remember. And unfortunately, because, I've heard singers say, oh, I've been listening to them since I was a teenager because it's bringing me closer to Hashem. There is sort of things like that. And to a point that they're now singing sort of these songs into their own Jewish concerts. And I find it so dangerous, because the songs are great. I mean, I was in there. I was a worship band leader. And I know the connection, the love, and the energy that gives off when you're ministering and you're trying to reach out to people and what it's doing. And I find that it's so dangerous. It's so genuine. It's so genuine in a way, but it's so dangerous. And I know of a few people who have gotten so caught up and said to the point that, how can this be bad? It's so great. It looks so good. It seems true. And on the music front, I don't think people have seen it so much. You both are on the preaching, coming here to Israel. There, you run into people here who are on the streets and are preaching it. I see it online with our own people either putting behind their reels and their videos a Christian song, and they don't know the background. I had a situation where there was a song called Oceans, and it's talking about taking me deep into the ocean and walking on the ocean in my faith. And I reached out to a fellow singer of mine to say, do you know what that song talks about? Because even though they don't say the word Yeshua in it or Jesus in it, this has a whole background of after his resurrection, him coming on water when his disciples were on the water and were afraid in the storm, and Yeshua coming out and telling them, come onto the water. He called out to Peter, was that right? Peter, and told him, come to the water, I'm your Lord, and have faith. And she was mind blown that these songs have these connections. And I've been trying my best to just educate our people about these certain songs and just telling them there's a background, even though they're not saying the word Yeshu, the intention and the kavana is in there. Which brings me to my point also, Rabbi. I saw this video that you posted a couple of weeks ago about the lions here in Yerushalayim. I was shocked. I was completely shocked. And I would love for you to touch a little bit on that. And Shannon also on, I can say how big of a deal it is. And I'd be like, this is wrong. When they come here, and you said that they come and pray on these lions, there's a kavana that's portrayed, that's given off. Just like we know that when we do our tefillot, it's powerful. Our tefillot can bring about upon miracles to our whole nation. It's also the same with the wrong kavana when it's coming from idolatry and paganism. And what sometimes I hear are people, because they're so politically correct in a way, they just say like, oh, it's not a big deal. It doesn't affect us. Does it? Does it affect us to be okay with this?
The Christians know exactly what they're doing. And in the video that I put up on my channel, I expose what they do, show the video of the very person that fashioned a lion for the land of Israel, where he admits, because he thinks he's only speaking to Christians, he admits that this lion was made so that Jews would look at the lion and see and think of Jesus. They're putting the lion there because in the book of Revelation, chapter 5, verse 5, we're told that Jesus is the lion that unseals the scroll. In fact, in this text, Jesus is portrayed as both the lamb and the lion. Those come up frequently, particularly in this type of Joannian theology. And this is referring to the lamb, his first coming, where Jesus was sacrificed, crucified, died for your sins. And Jesus is portrayed as the Lamb of God in John 1:29, 1:36. He's even crucified on a different day than the other Gospels to convey that. But his second coming, he will come as king, as lion, as the final redeemer in the second coming. And as it turns out, these Christians very carefully had these lions placed in the land of Israel, wherever you can imagine, all over the place, so that, and Jewish communities accepted it, were very excited about it, and they didn't realize that they're putting a Christian symbol. Moreover, when they put up the lion in Jewish communities, so they only make reference to Judah being a lion in Genesis chapter 49. They're very careful to hide their real agenda, and they don't insert in the plaque that appears on these lions any mention of Revelation. Conversely, when the lions are made and appear in Christian communities in the United States, or I even showed an example of a poster in the Christian quarter of Jerusalem in the Old City where that was filmed. There, they prominently put up Revelation 5:5. Why the game? It's a scam. It's a dishonesty. It's a way of fulfilling the words of Paul. Let me tell you, the viewer, this. Listen very carefully. These missionaries that seek to destroy our community didn't invent this technique. Paul explicitly states that you should engage in a chameleon behavior when you're around Jews. And he says to the Jew, I become as a Jew that I may convert the Jews. That's 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 20. To those who are under law, that's the Jews, I become as one who's under law, although I'm not under law. Paul didn't want to keep mitzvot. To those who are not Jewish, meaning not under law, I become as one not under law. I can become all things to all men that I may gain them. So that's what these missionaries are doing. This is a game. This is a game of sleight of hand. It's a game of misdirection. You know, when you go to a magic show, the magician, what is he doing? What he's doing is he's engaging in misdirection. He's not really violating the laws of physics. He's not cutting a lady in half. That's why the lady always goes into a box before he chops her in half. Why? What do you need a box for? Because he can't chop a lady in half and she'll walk away. Because it's all a scam. It's all misdirection. And in entertainment, we understand that that's what's happening and we just enjoy. But in the church, it's a nightmare because what they're doing is this is a bad magic show. Not only are they doing it by donating these lions, and they're all, listen carefully, all over the place in religious Jewish communities, all over the place. They were put there by Christians, not by Lubavitchers. And they all say to look at Genesis, not to look at Revelation. The whole thing is a game. And the church does the same thing with our Bible. It alters the Jewish scriptures in order to make it appear Christological. They use humanitarian aid. And the Joseph Project is an example to help beleaguered Jewish communities in the Gaza envelope survive the attacks from Gaza. And they use those humanitarian aid programs right now to evangelize the Jews. I just put up on my channel missionaries who work for Jews for Jesus, who are in the army. And because they need to raise money, they got to tell the truth. They say, we're going into the army as missionaries to convert other soldiers in Gaza. Imagine that. So just think for a moment. Soldiers right now, Israeli soldiers are in Gaza. Their lives are in grave danger. They're depending on each other in the battlefield. There's a bond that takes place between soldiers that frequently lasts a lifetime. And these missionaries are in the army exploiting, pun intended, weaponizing their relationship and bond with other soldiers, Jewish soldiers, to convert them and share the gospel with them, have it on film. It is a nightmare. They're doing this, as you said, in music. They're doing it here in Israel in plays that are being performed that are directed by the leaders of Jews for Jesus, and they fill theaters with hundreds of religious Jews watching theater productions produced by the leaders of Jews for Jesus. This sounds like a nightmare. It sounds like I must be making this up. I wish I was. It is a nightmare. That's what's happening here. Humanitarian aid is being used to share the gospel, and they create plausible deniability. And the key, what's the answer to this, my friends? Education. If education is not the answer, then everything Shannon is doing, everything I am doing is wrong. But as it turns out, thank God, thousands of people, I don't even know the numbers, frankly, are coming to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jewish people are leaving the church in huge numbers, huge numbers. And I want to point out one other thing that I don't think you intended to allude to, but I don't think anyone missed. The Christians that are converting to Judaism, the people who are putatively not Jewish become Jewish, where did they come from? They come from the very religious evangelical world. The vast bulk of them who are in conversion programs are former very committed Christians who took their religion very seriously, and then when they studied the Bible, they repented, they did tshuva, and they opted to convert to the Jewish faith or become B'nai Noach. Tragically, there are unfortunately Jewish people who are lost to the church, but who are they, frankly? Are they young men and women who are studying in yeshivot, in seminaries? No. They're men and women that know nothing about the faith they've abandoned. That tells you so much. So education is the answer. And when people who are lost in the church are shown the light of Torah, they immediately do tshuva, as it says in the book of Psalms, that Torah Hashem Tamima, the Torah of God is perfect. Meshivas nafesh, it alone can restore the soul. Eidus Hashem ne'emona, the testimony of the Almighty is trustworthy. Machkimas pesi, verse 7 and 8. It alone can make the foolish wise. We're living in a marvelous time now. Torah is spreading, the light is shining, and the darkness is receding, and Mashiach is coming, and the nations will speak B'safa Beruda, as Sephania says at chapter 3, verse 9, quickly in our time.
I want to talk tactics with you, what it is the missionaries do here, and what we can actually, how we can guard ourselves, how we can protect ourselves. Before I do, I have one question that I've always been wanting to ask. When we were leaving the church, and especially my dad was the last one to kind of be, who was apprehensive with with everything that my mom had researched, especially with your Let's Get Biblical, your whole series. One day after he gave in and was like, oh my goodness, like, this is, it seems like this is true. He went and reached out to his Bible scholars and his pastors and his superintendent. And one pastor went to another. One pastor told him to go to this other pastor, another. It kept going and going until he finally got a response. His response to my father was that back in the day, his name was John. He said, John, as you come to find out, what you've researched is true. But about Christianity being a religion of idolatry and false, and the teaching's false. And he said, but you have a comfortable job. You have a congregation of 200 plus people. Just think of it like this. It's like an omen. It makes the people feel good. This was the response that my father got. My question has always been, does the church and the people who are high up in the church, do they know this? Do they know that they are actually preaching falsely? Do they know this? Because I know I did it, like Shannon and I, we It came from the heart. We believed this really with our heart.
I want to just share a point that most people are not aware of that'll probably surprise you. And that is, in the Christian world, if you want to find very sincere people, go to the pews and not to the pulpit. And generally, this is an overgeneralization, but the leaders of the church, there's a lot of power, a lot of money, and a lot of everything else. In the pews, you find the very sincere people. There are people who stay in the church because, as leaders, because that's the only way they can make a living. It's the only way they can get the honor. It's the only way they can keep their families. It is much more likely that the parishioners will repent than the leaders will. Many leaders do. Many former pastors do tshuva.
I'd like to think that the pastors and the leaders aren't aware and that they bought into it just as much as we did. I do feel that some of the higher ups and the leadership are aware and don't have such good intentions. Your other question about how Jewish people get involved in these groups and why they get involved in these groups goes back to what Rabbi Singer said about the sleight of hand. I think he would agree that it's changed from 40 years ago when he started, where it was just changing, Jesus's name to Yeshua and saying Brit Chadashah instead of New Testament. And it was like basic change of the language. It's become much more sophisticated now, where their websites used to be very open. They've changed it so that now it looks much more kosher. They've changed their language. We're working from very different vocabulary. What Jewish people think certain words mean completely different things to a Christian. I know Rabbi Singer refers to it as a dog whistle. When we hear harvest, we don't think the same as a Christian when they say the word harvest. When they say restoration, that sounds nice to a Jew, and we think that's great. But restoration to a Christian means a very different thing. That means bringing back, Jesus in the second coming. When they say fulfilling prophecy, we are all for fulfilling prophecies also. But again, they refer to it as the second coming. When they talk about one new man theology, they talk about standing with the people of Israel and supporting the people of Israel and becoming one, and we're all together, and it's sort of a kumbaya nice message that the Jewish people think is so great and so nice. But the vocabulary is very different, and I don't think the Jewish people are aware of that. And I think that's where I started to realize that the Jewish people are innocently and naively getting involved in these groups and openly embracing them to
Right.
crazy, insane levels, and trusting people that they just don't realize what the real intention and what the real meaning behind those words and that theology is. And that's how they're succeeding. I'd like to think that it's not with ill intentions, but that they're just not aware. And that's a lot of what we do is we work with government leaders, Jewish organizations, and try to explain to them, which they insist, no, they're not proselytizing. That's not their agenda. But when they speak to Jewish audiences, they speak very differently than they do among the church. When I came to Judaism, I couldn't believe that Jewish people partnered and embraced them so openly, because I thought, how do you not know that? But that's because I was in the church and they speak openly behind closed doors. They talk about the methods that they're using and how they're doing it, and they brag and boast about their successes and how many people they brought to Jesus. So that is basically the work of B'naiinu, and what we've done is go find those videos where they're speaking openly among themselves, when they're doing their fundraising. Thank God they're reliant on funding from America, from their supporters, so they have to show their supporters that they're succeeding. There's a big competition for the evangelical dollar. All the evangelicals give a tremendous amount of money in order to convert Jewish people. So each organization that's operating here, targeting the Jewish people, has to prove that they're in more than the others, that they have more contact, they have government approval, they have more people on the ground, and they're making a bigger impact, and that helps them get more funding from the evangelicals that are supporting them. So it's those videos where they're speaking openly and talking about what they're doing that is often shocking when you bring that to Jewish leadership, who's insistent that they're working with really good people who have no agenda. And once they do discover that agenda, a lot of organizations have had a positive response and severed those relationships. We had a big case with Jewish Agency, which they were completely unaware that the organization that they had handling their lone soldiers and New Olim were actually missionizing, but through those fundraising videos and contact daily with their supporters, they exposed themselves, and we were able to encourage Jewish Agency when they did the right thing. They severed that relationship, and that no longer is happening.
Wow. So are you saying that there's churches, even though they're not here on the ground or even around the world, not just in Israel, but around the world, even though they're not on the ground missionizing physically, they're supporting it with funding? They're the churches outside of Israel who are giving money for these missionaries, because I hear that a lot, that as long as they're not here, you're okay. It's like, as long as they're not the one physically missionizing you. But I've gone to them, I told them no, but they're funded by the churches. Like, that's how they're able to operate here. So you're saying that there are around the world that the churches, the Christians, they are funding these organizations.
Oh my gosh.
They're funding for the purpose, just like we give for certain efforts. When you it's a mitzvah to write a Torah scroll. But when you give to that and you write a letter, you give to the purpose of that mitzvah.
What Shannon said is so vital for your viewers to understand, and that is that all these missionary groups receive hundreds of millions of dollars, primarily from South Korea and from North America, a fortune. The numbers are in hundreds of millions of dollars annually that these Southern Baptist churches, Assemblies of God churches, fuel this entire movement to evangelize the Jews. And as Shannon pointed out, that gives us the opportunity to discover who's funding, who's involved in Jewish evangelism. But yeah, all these churches, Prestonwood Baptist Church in Dallas, they're pouring in a fortune of money. There are evangelical charismatic churches in South Korea that are fueling this effort to convert the Jews. A very serious problem. The evangelical Christians who are coming here to evangelize very frequently are partnering with Jewish organizations here in Israel. And those Jewish organizations are often the fiercest defenders of these evangelical Christian missionaries. And this becomes very, very challenging. I know this is not something you want to hear or your viewers want to hear, but it's vital. I will say this. It's very important for Christian organizations that expressed that they're interested in converting Jews while providing humanitarian aid. If they have a change of mind and decide that they don't want to do that anymore, make it clear to all of us, not have some Jewish person do it for you, but be unambiguous on your websites to make it clear to the world that you're not involved in Jewish evangelism, because this is a very serious problem. Evangelicals are infiltrating Israeli society much more here in a way than in the United States. In America, it's very unlikely that a synagogue is going to have any working relationship with the church. It's very unlikely to happen in Argentina or Brazil. In South America, it's very unlikely, but here in Israel, it's very likely because there's so much partnering with evangelical groups. Now, there are some Christian groups that really disavow Jewish evangelism and say so publicly, and we applaud that. So we like to see that continue. But this is a very grave danger we face, and sometimes the people who put a hechsher on these organizations are not Christians. So it's a very serious, very messy situation.
If I can ask, what is the answer to that? I know you gave your answer, but if you can give a more concrete, how do we handle that without it becomes very tiring when we start trying to raise awareness and we get shut down and people say, no, they're fine. What is the answer to that? Do we keep speaking about it? Do we keep doing these videos? Do we?
Look, if education is not the answer, as I said, then everything we are doing is wrong. Now, with regards to evangelical Christian, first of all, not all, but almost all evangelical Christians want to convert Jews. I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to your viewers. Get that through your head. There are some exceptions. It's very unusual. There are some very rare evangelical groups that are not involved in Jewish evangelism. It's very, very rare. And what you should be asking is, I want to see on the evangelical organization's website, state that you disavow Jewish evangelism and will not engage in it and not permit it in your organization. Don't create plausible deniability. Don't have Jewish groups vouch for you. Say it yourself. And if they're unwilling to say it, it is going to alarm Jewish communities throughout the land of Israel. It's not a touchy issue. It's just something that must be addressed. So I applaud. There were like the Christian Coalition Caucus. There were some groups that the Mormons, when they built their center on Mount Scopus during the Kolek years, they agreed not to engage in evangelism in Israel as part of the agreement to allow them to build their center. Great. Now it's vital for other organizations to do that, to make it clear on their websites that they will not engage in any Jewish evangelism. If they do that, we applaud them. We want to see more of that, but we want to hear it directly from them. Now, one other point. If a Christian group, like some Catholic humanitarian group, who has no history of evangelism, so that's something different. But the groups that were involved in Jewish evangelism, say it clearly, unambiguously, please, because it creates a problem when Jewish communities come to Shannon or myself asking if we support it. So we need that. And we're all crying out that the silence is deafening. We need explicit statements from the organizations themselves. So this is a problem.
Thank you so much. Shannon, if you can kind of prep us as to, you spoke a little bit about tactics, what's going on from the difference of what happened 40 years into like what's going on now with the Christian missionaries, how they gear themselves up in Christian missionizing and missionizing our people. What other things can we look out for? There's a lot of women who they come on my page and they send me personal messages asking me, is this, my neighbor came and dropped this paper off with me. Is this what they're trying to do? If you can just, or, just the words, like, even like I said, the music, but they're using the word ya, or they're using the word ado. Is it okay for me? Like, can I listen to this? It doesn't say anything about Yeshu. So what are the tactics that they're using? What can we look out for and protect ourselves more? Rabbis talked about educating ourselves, making sure that we know who we are, Jewish, our Jewish identity, making sure we're strong in Torah and our biblical scriptures. What else can we do?
Regarding the halachas about listening to those and what you can and can't, I would let the rabbi answer that. But what to watch out for, I think the rabbi has also said, people like you and I, who are familiar with this, when we see the red flags before anybody else does, we know the language and the background. And sometimes it's somebody that's come from the same background and us, and they're completely kosher and they're on this journey just like we are. But sometimes they're not. And it's important to take that to Jewish leadership. And I think the rabbi has told Jewish leadership, when you have somebody in your midst that's a convert that has been in that world, don't ignore the red flags. When they tell you that there's a problem, listen to them. Every covert missionary that has been exposed has been somebody who just paid attention to the red flag. They went to Jewish leadership and said, I know that from the congregation. I know that person from the congregation that I was in, or I had a strange conversation and they mentioned things that I know are from the church. And then that allows the leadership to confront them. And maybe there's an explanation, but they need to be brought in and asked questions. Jewish identity, they've stopped going through the conversion process. It used to be that the Beit Din were, concerned about people trying to get through the conversion process, and they would find ways to not answer the questions, and the Beit Din wasn't prepared for those, deceptive answers. But they've stopped doing that. Now they just come in and pretend to be Jews. They come in dressed like a chassid, and Jewish people, rightfully so, think they're Jewish. They come in with a black hat and learn Daf Yomi with the rabbi for 6 months, and then ask for a letter for recommendation to make Aliyah. People were horrified that Michael Elk was able to get smicha. And how did he did that? Because it never occurred to anybody that a Christian would apply for a smicha program. That wasn't on the radar of Jewish people. That was just absurd. But now we do have to be aware of that. We do have to have our guard up and be mindful and recognize it, and not be afraid to ask the questions, asking somebody their background. We walk into a room and we play Jewish geography, and you find out, people all over the place. The Jewish world is very small. When something stands out and the background doesn't quite make sense, or things don't add up, don't be afraid to ask those questions. Especially Jewish leadership needs to not be afraid to ask those questions. Jewish identity, you have to give proof of Jewish identity to make Aliyah. We have a whole file of paperwork and visas and ins and outs. You have to answer a lot of questions, and those questions need to be asked. And it's unfortunate that we have to have our guard up, but the Jewish people have been used to this for centuries.
Is there a list with Christian missionaries that we can find somewhere, that we can, just to have our guard up when we hear a certain name, that, that radar, not just for us who grew up in it, but who, for other people, if they hear that name, they'll be on guard a bit. Is there a place where we can find a list that we can show our viewers?
If you see an evangelical Christian group that's infiltrating the Jewish community, you really have to assume the worst. That's the truth. If you see a liberal Episcopalian group, a Hillary Clinton kind of Methodist, then I have nothing to worry about. But if you see an evangelical Christian group that's seeking to infiltrate the community, you better get that name to Shannon so that she could confirm it, go through it. It's a very serious problem, very serious problem. And I want to repeat this. These evangelicals are very pro-Israel. They really are. But they're using that support for Israel and that rejection of replacement theology. They're not like the Catholic Church. They don't think that the covenant with Israel has been terminated as the Catholic Church does or the Orthodox Church does. You have to be very, very careful with the evangelical groups because so many of them are using their relationship with Jewish people. Let me just say something else here. I have to clear this up. There are a number of rules about Jewish evangelism that will surprise you. In almost all cases, the person who succeeds in converting a Jew to Christianity is a Gentile evangelical Christian and not a professional missionary, not someone on the staff of Jews for Jesus. So I want to share this with you. When you run a program with evangelical Christians of any kind, the leaders of the group don't have to do a thing. The moment you have evangelical Christians networking socially with Jews, you're going to have evangelism going on. So the organizations could claim they can deny that they know anything about it, but the moment you have interaction, you have bomb that's going to go off. That's where evangelism happens. I am sure there are some people watching me now, listening to my voice, who knows somebody that got involved in one of these groups. Ask that Jewish person, how did that happen? And I'll tell you exactly what happened. They met someone at one of these events. It occurs exactly through the venue I am describing. So be very careful with these organizations that are united for Israel, because they don't have to expressly say anything. They know this is an offensive issue, so they just bring them together, and the networking goes on in the ballroom, United for Israel, and the conversion goes on in the living room. That's how it happens. You have to be very, very careful.
Rabbi Tovia Singer and Shannon, thank you so much for being on today. One thing I'd like to add at the end is because we're speaking of Chanukah and being lighted to the nations, who we are. It's our essence. It's who we are, lighted to the nations. It's our mission in this world. I like to think that, and also because it says, the more that we are together, the more that we hold on to our Torah and to each other as a Jewish nation, the nations will cling on to us. It says in the prophecies, they'll cling on to us and they'll come to know who the real God is, which is our mission. So the more we are being more damaging when we accept and we embrace our fellow Christians and say, you're okay doing you, I'm okay doing us. It's more damaging because our main mission on earth is to make sure that not only are we okay with our Torah and we're keeping our mitzvot, but to make sure that the rest of the nations around the world are leaving idolatry thoughts, ideologies, and even their gods, and coming to the one true Hashem, the one true King of the world. So if you want to help out your fellow Christians, the fellow world, put a boundary there. The point that they either leave the church or they themselves become Jewish, because the Torah is so beautiful. You can't neglect it. So I just want to say that to the listeners and viewers out there, is that let's put a boundary. Let's make sure that we, our people, are taking care of each other and we know who we are. We hold on to our Torah and we do what we're supposed to do, and the nations will follow after us. And they, that's the way we can be a light into the nations. If you'd like to donate, Rabbi Tovia Singer is holding his Chanukah campaign, and you can go to outreachjudaism.org, shannonbenenu.com, and make sure to support them in the work that they're doing here in Israel, not only in Israel, but around the world. Guys, you should look at the videos. It's being seen by thousands and thousands of people, and it's doing so much good. I'd like to, Shannon, if you'd like to leave off with a few words before we log off.
I think we pretty much covered it.
Yeah. This is about a final redemption, the return of not just the Jewish people, but the world to the one God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I don't know why my great-grandfather, who was killed in Hungary in 1944, wasn't around to see this. We are living in a remarkable time. We have not only a shared history, but a unique destiny and an appointment with that destiny. May we be zeicha to see the coming of the true Mashiach quickly in our time. Thank you so much for having us on today.
Thank you so much. Everybody be on the lookout for the next Speak Up series, which will be next week. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Have a good night and Chanukah Sameach.
Chag Sameach.